The European Union's foundations were laid some 70 years ago, after the Second World War.
We hope to see a Europe where men of every country will think as much of being a European as of belonging to their native land.
So what are the EU's main achievements today? After the Second World War, which cost the lives of over 50 million people, European leaders and intellectuals came together with one goal: bringing peace and unity to the continent.
Europe wasn't built. We had war. Europe will neither be built in one go, nor as a whole structure. It will be made with concrete achievements that would create a de facto solidarity.
The thought was that if countries formed stronger economic ties, they'd be much less likely to fight one another. And it worked. The European Union has been war-free for more than 70 years, with democratic principles and human rights as its core commitments. It even received the Nobel Peace Prize for this achievement. But critics warn that democracy is waning in Europe. They say many governments are becoming increasingly authoritarian and that democratic values, like press freedom, are under pressure. What started as an economic collaboration between 6 countries in the late 1950s today comprises 28 member states representing 500 million people. Since then, the EU has continued to prosper. It is the world's 4th largest economy by GDP. And it is one of the 3 biggest players in international trade, together with the US and China. Statistics suggest that even new member states have a higher average GDP after joining the European Union. And then there was the introduction of a joint European currency, the euro, which not only facilitated trade, but also brought more economic stability. But the EU's economic power is often at the expense of countries that aren't part of the Union. Heavily subsidized agriculture in EU countries and free trade deals are putting businesses in Africa under pressure. That's because the EU now produces much more than it consumes, with much of the extra produce being exported to Africa, where it's cheaper to buy the subsidized European produce than food produced locally. In Senegal, for example, people eat baguettes made with European wheat flour. And in Ghana, people are eating tomatoes from Italy that were ironically cultivated by African migrants. Freedom of movement is one of the cornerstones of EU citizenship. Every EU citizen has the right to move and reside freely within the EU. They can travel, work and study wherever they wish within the Union. And they're making use of it. In 2015, more than 17 million people were living and working in an EU member state other than their country of citizenship. But while borders within Europe have been phased out, border control on the outside borders has become more severe. Critics repeatedly refer to the EU as Fortress Europe, as member countries increasingly seal themselves off from migrants and refugees from outside. In 2015, the increasing number of refugees led several EU member states to reintroduce checks at their internal borders, and to growing disagreement and discussions between the countries. The EU has yet to find a common ground approach to the topic. Migration from outside the EU remains a tense and unresolved issue.